Warning, this podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint. Check your left phone for going to full evacuation at this time. They're pulling them out.
911, advise ready for camp.
God!
Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Chuck. Tom unfortunately could not be here today. Tom had a procedure done on his back, like we've been talking about on Locker Room and some other War Stories episodes. So it is just me today, but I am graced by the presence of Jorge Colina. Now, Jorge Colina is right here. How you doing, George?
I'm doing great, Chuck. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you? Great. So George was he's a retired Miami City police chief. We got another chief on, and he runs he's a president of the Jorge Colina Group. Sir, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? Which is, I think, a more important question with everything that's going on in California right now.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So California is under siege right now with wildfires and stand by. Sir, I'm so glad you asked that question. Yeah, California is under siege right now with wildfires. It's crazy to think. I know we record this in advance, so all of you guys listening, this is in the future. This is in the past, I guess, or the future. Whichever way you're going to look at it. But so you guys are listening to this. The fires have already happened. They were pretty devastating. They were pretty bad. A lot of them were set by arsonists, and I believe they're talking about the Palisades fire being set by an arsonist or fireworks. But then there was also other people trying to set spot fires during those fires that were crazy. And then all the looting and everything that was going on. Yeah, it's just a really crazy and wild time. And I had a hard time looking at all those 5 fires breaking out and saying, wow, that's natural. Because that's not, even with Embercast and all that stuff being carried by winds, and the gust of winds were pretty bad. Some of those fires and where they started were so far apart from one another that the ember cast would have fallen on other houses and things like that before it had gotten that far. So it's a wild time that we're living in, that people could think that going out and setting fires to a state is okay, because that get killed a lot of people. I lost a lot of friends of mine, a lot of classmates of mine lost their houses. A lot of coworkers of mine lost their houses. I think there's like 8 or 9 of them that work for my department that lost their houses. So it's a very, very tough time. And if you guys were listening on Locker Room, we gave out one of those GoFundMes to my classmates. So thank you guys all for pitching in. That really helped. He's trying to recover. His family's trying to recover, and he's a legacy too. So him, his sister, his dad, they're all coppers. So yeah, it's a rough time out here, but hey, where we're at, we're okay. We're safe. It's impacted a lot of people, and it's impacted my Rams, who are playing today. Today is the first playoff game, and they are in Arizona. So that this gives you a time frame of when this was recorded. So yeah, but sir, how's it going in Miami? If that's where you currently are at.
Yeah, Miami's great. I mean, it's a mid winter, and I don't know, it was like 72 degrees here, and so
Midwinter 72.
So the weather's pretty phenomenal, and I don't have any complaints. Honestly, everything's really good.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, and so have you lived in Miami your whole life?
Pretty much. I was born in Weehawken, New Jersey, so I'm originally from New Jersey, but we moved down here when I was 3, and I moved back to New Jersey when I was 20 for a few months until the winter came, right? And then I thought, who the get the, and I came back home. But so I've been most of my life here.
Wow, so that's interesting. I had my cousin JJ. He was NYPD, and he loved vacationing in Florida from New York.
Yes.
And so I see a lot of the New Yorkers and guys from New Jersey and the folks from New Jersey coming down to Florida. Is that just because it gets too cold up there? And they're like, oh, we got to escape. We got to get to the warmer climate.
Yeah, it's a way to break up the winter. The winter is rough up in the Northeast. And a lot of people have family down here. And so you get to break up the winter, You get to warm up a little bit. You get to see friends and family, and so it's pretty common for a lot of, the Northeast, whether it's New York, New Jersey,
Mhm.
Boston, Pennsylvania. A lot of people come down during the winter.
Wow. So it's like home away from home. That's awesome.
Yes, yeah,
You got a
absolutely.
lot of family out there too, so it's
Yeah.
it's a great place. I've been out there a few times. Orlando, um, Cocoa Beach, um, and that's it. And then we
Yeah.
drove through all the way down to Georgia. We drove from South Carolina through Georgia into Florida, so we got to see all of that, but we didn't really stop
Nice.
anywhere other than Orlando and then uh, yeah, Cocoa Beach, which is cool.
Next
Cocoa Beach
time
is
you got to
awesome.
come all the way down. Next time you got to come all the way down.
Yeah, all the way down to Miami. My buddy, one of my really good friends, he just moved from Miami to Texas, and he loves it out there. And I got to tell you, all the times I would see him going fishing on a Friday or a Saturday and pulling in just like the craziest mahi mahis or
Yeah,
whatever, and just the color on these fish is, oh my gosh, he would just go out with his brother on their boat and they would go catch it. You would have to charter that. If you wanted that in California, you would have to pay so much money for that charter to go out there, and they're just able to go out there and fish in their backyard and just pull some of the craziest
absolutely.
fish.
Yeah.
It's
There's
amazing.
people that live in the Keys that fish off the pier, the
Mm.
dock behind their home,
Mm.
and catch all kinds of fish, and
Oh
so
yeah.
it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's beautiful out there. I was on the canals and we were looking at what's that protected
The Everglades.
mammal? No,
Oh, the manatees.
manatees.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, they're so massive and so graceful and just they're enormous in the wild. I'd never seen one up close. And then we're in the canals because they had a house in the canals, which is gone now because of the hurricane that came through, completely wiped out the neighborhood. So those in Florida who are still out there and still cleaning up after those hurricanes, God bless you, and keep pushing, keep your head up because it's rough and I know it. But it was just so peaceful out there and just watching it, this big freaking mammal just or fish or whatever it is, just
yeah, they're super
headed
gentle.
through
And
the canal.
what's interesting is that if you open up a hose and you
Hmm.
put fresh water,
Yeah.
they hear the sound, they come to the fresh water. They're mammals, so even though they're in the
Wow.
ocean, they're mammals, and so they'll drink that fresh water. They come up for air. You can feed them
No
lettuce
way.
or whatever. Yeah, it's a
You
trip
just
how
can't
they
touch
will.
them.
Yeah, the people, the people that are that know a little bit more about it, will tell you, hey, don't do that. But you can absolutely pet them because they're docile. They're docile.
They're like the golden retrievers of the ocean
They are. They really
or the
are.
brackish water.
Right.
So you grew up in Florida and you became a cop in Florida. How did
Yes.
you become a cop in Florida? I mean, you obviously made police chief, so you had an illustrious career. But what led you to law enforcement to start?
Man, so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I really enjoyed history. And so
Mhm.
I thought, right, my initial thought was, maybe I'll go and major in history at school and go to law school, become an
Yeah.
attorney. Um, and my family, really encouraged me, right?
Mhm.
They thought that was a great idea. I was speaking to my girlfriend at the time, who now has been my wife, for 32 years. We've been together for 38 years. She was my
Oh,
girlfriend at the time. And I told her, man, I just don't know if I want to do this, to be honest. I don't know how I feel about it. And she asked me, well, what do you want? What do you think would make you happy? And I said, honestly, I've never shared this with anybody, but I think it would be the coolest thing to be a cop. And
good woman.
she was like, really? I said, yeah. She goes, well, then that's what you should do. Well, that's the only encouragement I needed. Went and applied,
Yeah.
so that was pretty awesome.
That's amazing. I love how, you know, um, as you have a strong woman who's just like, what do you want to do? What makes you tick? What makes you happy? I love that. I love hearing that because far too many times I hear coppers and they're like, my wife didn't want me to do this job and I had a calling, so I did it. And that's why we split.
No, she's
I think
been
that's great.
super supportive the whole time from before, I was in law enforcement and throughout my whole career. And, there was different times in my career where sometimes the media
Mhm.
wasn't, fair. Sometimes you're
Or
catching,
accurate.
yeah, or accurate. Well, always when it wasn't fair, it wasn't accurate.
Mhm.
And, sometimes you just catch a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And, man, she's always been super supportive as I worked my way up. I'm very, very grateful that she's always been very supportive.
That's really good. And guys who are listening, that's the type of person that you need to find, man or woman alike. That is the type of person that you need in this career who will support you and understand when things go south and be there for you to be your rock. That is what we need,
No doubt about it.
especially in this tough environment and this tough job. So you had a really long career, and you've been with your wife from the beginning. That's amazing. Um, and you just kind of had that calling. What was it like your first year on the job? Was it everything that you thought it was going to be, or were you like? Because I know my first year on the job, I'm a legacy cop. Like my dad was, he was a cop. My aunt was a cop. My aunt works for the same agency, or retired from the same agency I'm currently working and will retire from. So I remember my first year. I thought it was, oh man, I thought I was locked on and ready to go. And I had a massive culture shock. And I was like, what the freak did I just walk into? And I remember calling my dad on probation. I was like, I don't know if I can do this, man. Like, this is tough. Like, I remember you telling me in high school that I need to be better at writing reports because if I ever want to become a cop, that's all I'm going to do. And that's all I do. And I'm like, Dad, you're right. Like, holy crap. Like, I'm so sorry for ever, doubting you and not taking that seriously because I'm having a tough time right now and I'm having to write like 4 reports a day and it's crazy. So and arresting people and hooking and booking and going to calls and all this other stuff. I was tired, first day working like 18 hours and I was like, whoa, wow, that was rough. And having to wake up, a couple hours later and go back all again because I'm on probation and I have to set up everything, the roll call, I have to do everything, make copies. So that first year when you're at Miami City, because I assume that you went from Miami City all the way through to chief, right?
Yes, my whole career was at the city of Miami.
That's amazing. What was it like that first year on probation?
The first year, it was a blast for me. Now, the first 2 months, so in Miami, you have, you ride obviously with a field training officer
Right.
for the first 3 months, and each month it's a different officer. The first month was a little bit of a shock, right? It was midnights. I had never worked midnights before, and it was a 9P to 7A. And it was a little, probably a little overwhelmed with everything that I'm absorbing. Very, very, very busy. My second month was now daytime in a different part of the city. And after that second month, I thought, man, I don't know if this is for me. It's really not what I imagined. I had this perception in my mind. I thought it was going to be like TV,
Like
and it
cops.
has, yeah, and it hasn't
Yeah.
been like that. However, there was an incident, and this sergeant that I didn't know pulls up, and he kind of takes control of the scene. And he starts directing officers, and things are starting to move now, right? This guy is giving all these directions, and he was obviously well respected because everybody's moving. And then I thought there, okay, wait a minute. See, this is a little bit more of what I thought. So
Right.
that interaction there with that sergeant was pretty impactful. And then I thought, okay, maybe let me give it a little bit of time to see. And then honestly, I wound up on the midnight shift working in a pretty rough part of the city. You're a rookie cop. They put you at
Yeah.
nights, bad days off in a really, tough part of the city.
Mhm.
But honestly, we were really busy and it was a lot of fun, right? This was
Oh,
1990. So a
that's
lot of
the
car
best.
chases. Yeah. And it was a blast. I mean, some crazy stuff, right? Looking
Mhm.
back, but it was a lot of fun for me. It really was.
You know what they don't tell you when you go to like a bigger agency? Because I assume Miami City is a pretty decent sized agency and they
Yeah.
probably have a few different divisions to work. I assume. Yeah.
Yes,
So the
absolutely.
agency I work for, and did my probation and stuff on, you have lots of different divisions, right? And so I remember, thinking when I'm in the academy and getting ready to go out and I'm getting to pick my wheel list of where I want to wheel to. And I have a wish list, probably top 5, top 3 if you're good at, you're probably going to get top 5 if you're okay. You're probably getting your 5th if you're bottom in the class. It just is what it is. I ended up getting my first pick and I didn't know anything about it. And I didn't know if I wanted to go somewhere really fast and like the shittiest part of town, right? The shittiest part of the city. I was like, man, I'm kind of nervous because it's kind of daunting when you think about it. Like there's a lot of shootings down there. There's a lot of stabbing. So you're going to be moving very fast. Will I have time to retain everything and learn? And then I was like, I really don't want to go to like a slow part because I want to learn. And I'm just afraid of what that might look like, even though it might be easy. And what I learned going through it, I ended up picking somewhere in the middle. So I ended up working that bordered the really shitty parts and it bordered the really rich parts. So we got a lot of really bad dudes coming in, like rolling 40s, Crips, Bloods, MS-13, 18th Street gangsters, like really bad dudes. And I was like, wow, this is a little bit busier than I thought. And I was so thankful for it because the busier it was, the easier it was. I didn't have to spend so much time figuring out like being an English major on my report. But when I went to a slower division, it was exact opposite. It was a lot harder. And I'm glad I worked both because I got to hone my report writing skills in one area and I got to hone my tactical and other skills in a different part. So what I would like to say to like all these young guys that are listening, because we have so many of them to listen, if you're ever curious of where you should go, pick the busiest, fast, nastiest station you can get because it's going to give you the most tactical experience. You're going to learn how to write reports. You're going to learn how to do all that stuff that will be easier down the road later when you get your foothold and bearing on know exactly what you're going to do. But those faster divisions, I wish someone had told me go to the fastest, nastiest division you can pick right off the bat because it hones you so much better and so much faster than all of your peers.
Oh, the speed in which you learn, right?
It's crazy.
And you start to see if your instincts are good. When you work in an area like that, the camaraderie is significantly higher because everyone knows, right, that, hey, I got to go and make sure that I'm there for Chuck. Everyone recognizes your voice on the radio and they can tell if there's a slight difference when you're advising. Yes. And then everybody's coming because it's a rough part of town. So that feeling of you've joined something bigger, that feeling of,
yes,
I'm part of a team. I'm going to take care of you. You're going to take care of me. You feel that right away. If you go to a slower part of town, not that you don't learn things there, because it's a different skill set. You need to learn to communicate better, right? You need to be more patient with people, that kind of thing, because it's just you're dealing kind of like in a completely different world, and you develop skills there as well. But early on, when you're young and you're running and gunning, man, it's exciting. It's fun. The days go by quick. You go on vacation and you're anxious to come back to work because you miss the crew, you miss the excitement, you want to know what happened, what's going on. And then you really do get that sense that it's a fraternity, right? Because, man, we all back each other up. You feel that when you're in a rough part of town because everybody's taking care of everybody.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because that just explained my whole first year and change when I on my probationary division. And it was just like that. The camaraderie was crazy. You were vying to come back on your days off, even though you were tired and you're working overtime and not getting paid for the overtime because the city doesn't have money to pay you, but you're still out there, you're banking that time. You're still out there running and gunning because everybody else is doing the exact same thing. No one's complaining. And then you had those people here and there, but for the most part, camaraderie, I had never experienced camaraderie like that. And I came from the Marine Corps and our camaraderie was pretty good in our unit. But there it was, you're seeing death on a scale that you don't see anywhere else in any other profession. And you're seeing heartache on a scale you don't see in any other profession. And everyone comes together and you get hurt, they come together. And then I go into a slower division and it was just, and I've had a lot of friends, but it was nothing compared to that first division. And that's why I rocked them on my wall. They're forever going to be in my brain and they're family to me. And I still talk to those guys that I was made really good friends with in that probationary division because that camaraderie was so thick and because it was a fast-paced division. And I just think that is just, that's the way it is in fast-paced divisions. It's the camaraderie's tighter because you're all in the suck together and everybody knows it.
You really, literally, your life is in someone else's hands because it's a dangerous, part of the city, and you need, your teammates. It's just the reality. You can work in other parts of town where it's always a dangerous job. We know that, but you can work somewhere else and you don't necessarily feel that same connection than you do in one of those places where you see, like you said, you see people being shot and stabbed. You see people unfortunately lose their lives, and it really does bring you together as a team. That was awesome. I'm not going to lie. That first year was pretty cool.
Yeah. And when you put that backup out, when you're in a fight and you're like, hey, I need help, and you hear the city light up around you and you're like,
right. The cavalry's coming.
Boys. Yeah. And then when you work in I worked in a slower area too, put out a backup, crickets.
That's
not one voice over the air. Even the helicopter comes over and says, we can't respond. And I'm like,
you're in the air.
What is going on? And you're sitting there, you're like, wow, this is crazy. And you're in a fight for 5 minutes, whereas you're fighting down in a smaller area, faster area. A lot more cops are saturated in that area. They're there within 30 seconds. And it's just, but if you are not nice to them, they might take 3 minutes. Yeah. And that 3 minutes might make it or break it for you. So, So when you were on probation that first year, it was really fast for you. Did you have any crazy experiences where you were just like, wow, that was like something out of a movie, or, like a crazy fight or a crazy incident?
Man, we had a lot that first year that was kind of crazy, and maybe for some people would have been enough for them to reconsider a career change. And I remember specifically, there was a van that went by, and you can just tell from the look of the person that, okay, I need to turn around and go stop this van, right? Oh, yeah. And the van takes off, and it's a long pursuit. The guy ends up bailing out. And at first, there's probably like, I don't know, 7 or 8 of us that all bail out and start chasing this guy. He was in a stolen car, and the car was taken in an armed robbery. So,
wow.
Yeah, pretty serious.
Very.
We start running after this guy, and I was new, so I was fit. So after like the first block, the rest of the guys are now, back there, and it's basically me still running and advising while I'm chasing the guy. He ends up running into an alley, and then when he kept looking back. When he sees that it was just me, he turns around and squares off. I just ran. Yeah, I ran, and I had a flashlight. I swung the flashlight. I hit him, and we both go down, and then I'm exhausted. So I just kind of grab him and hold him, because it's occurring to me in real time. Shit, this guy ran into an alley and then stopped. You know, his plan is not a good one for me, right? That occurred to me, and I thought, that's okay. I'm going to hold him. And then eventually the rest of the guys got there and did what they have to do, and we took this guy in custody. I find out later that this guy had escaped prison in Louisiana. He was in jail for the attempted murder of an officer in New York. So he was arrested in New York.
Oh, bad dude.
Bad dude. That was pretty crazy, because even though I was young and maybe not the brightest at the time, right? More of an adrenaline junkie than anything else.
Yeah.
It still kind of freaked me out a little bit, right? The idea that, man, this guy could have disarmed me and killed me, which is probably what his plan was. If he stopped 100%. There in this alley, that was probably his plan. That did change, Chuck, the way that I handle things. So, until that moment, I was just like, hey, man, I'm the fastest guy and I'm fit. I'm just going to go. But after that happened, I still went, but man, I was significantly more careful. I advised a lot more. I was just safer, quite frankly. And to this day, I feel fortunate that I wasn't even hurt on that. But it did open my mind in a way that I'm grateful for. If I wouldn't have experienced that, I don't know how the rest of my time there would have gone. I don't know if I would have kept being a little bit I'm going to say a loose cannon, just in terms of how aggressive I was. Um, I don't know. I'm grateful that happened. It was a great catch, so I'm happy for
Right.
that, right? Because this guy needed to go back to jail. But like I said, when I went home and kind of reflected on the whole thing, and thank God the guys got there, when they got there, but that could have gone horribly wrong. So that was like one of the, vivid stories that I remember from that first
Right.
year.
Well, I mean, that's great that you had that sight to see that. Wow, that could have got really, really wrong. And you kind of changed, and that it's crazy how that happens to a lot of us, where things you used to do, now you're like, whoa,
Yeah, let
pump
me
the
think
brakes
about
a
this
little
a little
bit.
bit more. Let me handle.
Exactly.
Let me call and get people over here
Yeah.
before I make an approach. Right? Hey, I want to make an
Yeah.
approach. Well, let me get some help just in case.
Yeah. Time's always on your side.
That's
Resources
it.
are on your side. If you need to call in the
100%.
cavalry, call on your resources.
No doubt.
You're never, as cops, we don't fight alone. We don't fight fair. We don't fight alone. If you have to,
100%.
you better be freaking solid, and you better know what you're doing, because they're going to fight dirty.
That's
And
right.
yeah, that's why we don't fight alone. So, I mean, it's crazy how we have a bunch of those incidents that kind of shape our careers and kind of move forward. And it's good to have that sight right at the very beginning, because, man, I think it took me a few years to really kind of like, oh, okay, pump the brakes a little bit, and then start really realizing things like, oh, hey, maybe I should try this. Maybe I should slow down. And then I started realizing that. And then when I started realizing that, I was slowing other people down. I'm like, hey, whoa, 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 whoa,
Right.
calm
Right.
down.
Right.
Like you're so amped up, you're about to walk
Yeah,
in front of a whole line of guns.
that's
And
right.
now we're going to have to put all of our guns down, and we only have one gun down range, which is not good. And I had to do that to a chick. She's a friend of mine, and she's a neighboring division. We had a felony stop on a probably a stolen car or something, or a robbery or something, because those were so common where we work. And she was like almost sprinting, and I was like, oh, nope,
Slow down.
come back here, slow down, girl. And like, hey, keep your gun down range, don't go in front of us, because we don't want to shoot you in the back if this guy opens fire. She's like, I got it, cool. And so it's great to have that sight to see before it turns into a really crappy situation. So that's good on you. Like, from a really young age, I mean, it seems like you really had your wits about you. Now, where did it kind of go after that? What kind of units did you work after that to get you to the point where you ended up as a chief?
So I worked in patrol midnights for about 3 years, and then we had a street narcotics unit that was, um, an aggressive unit. And I thought, man, I would love to be part of this. Everybody kind of
Mhm.
looked at them as like, oh man, these are the badasses, right? So, I thought, shit, I'd love to go work there. So they had an opening, but the opening was for a buyer. And so I said, well, shit,
Oh,
I'll give it a try. And so I was an undercover buyer, street level narcotics. I later in my career did mid level, and then I did smuggling cases. We worked a lot of wires, that kind of thing, which was fine. And that was a lot of fun, a lot of surveillance work. That was a lot of
right.
fun. The street level buying was honestly really nerve wracking, because
Oh, I
every
bet.
day, yeah, you're going from spot to spot, and the adrenaline as you're en route to a drug hole to make a buy is through the roof. And then, regardless of what happens, whether you made the buy, they turned you down, or there was no one there, now the adrenaline is dropping. And then back up as you're en route to the next place. Really dangerous work, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
It was a super cool experience. The team was an awesome team. Uh, but man, that was rough work.
I, I bet.
I'll admit that was rough
The buy
work. I thought
teams are
all over the city.
scary.
Yeah, that was very scary. I was fortunate, had somebody that was a pretty good trainer. The training did not go on, very long. You have basically somebody speak to you, and then you're like, okay,
Mhm.
let's go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, there wasn't like you went to some class. No, it was like on the job.
Wow. So it's baptism by fire right out of the gate.
Baptism by fire. Now, I did have a guy who, my first day in the street narcotics unit, the sergeant there wanted me to, pull out money, and okay, let's go start buying dope. We'll tell you where to go, and you go buy dope. And this one guy, thankfully, had, the balls basically to tell the sergeant, hey man, that's not cool. This guy's brand spanking new. It's dangerous. No. he's going to ride with me, and
Yeah.
he's going to watch me, and I'm going to let him know what to do and what not to do. And I'm real grateful to him. He was great. He taught me little tricks of the trade. Never put your car in park, leave it in drive, have your foot on the brake in case you have to immediately accelerate, right? You don't want to have to
Right.
pop it in gear. Keep your gun under your thigh in case, you get robbed. Have two radios, one on the TAC channel, one on the working channel, in case you got to immediately grab and advise. I mean,
That's smart.
a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
He would tell me, he told me, listen, in some of these places, if you wait and you walk up with a prostitute, they're going to serve you because they're used to serving the prostitute. If they see you with the prostitute, they're going to assume you're a John, and they're going
Yeah.
to serve you. Oh, and that worked great, right? So I would do that. I remember him telling me, park about a block away. Your cover team is going to advise. If you see somebody out in the street, wave. They're going to wave back because that's what you instinctively do. You wave at somebody, they wave back. They're
Right.
wondering, I don't know who that is, but I'll be polite. Well, the doper is watching you walk up,
Right.
and he sees you interacting with someone, so he makes the assumption he must be from
Local.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a local, he's a regular. Keep the money in your hand. They get tunnel vision on the money so you can do the exchange quickly. All these tips that were really, really helpful. So I did that for a while. I worked in special investigations. I did mid-level narcotics. Then I worked smuggling cases. All that was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Money laundering cases. That was fun.
Oh, I bet. The best time I ever had was working the chase team for our vice units. And that was about the briefing that we got. It was, hey, do this, do this, do this. And everything was just kind of like, you're going to learn. Figure it
Yes, you
out.
are.
Yeah. And that was the best time. And then I tried getting into a buy team, exactly what you're doing. Like, oh my God, that was like my dream job right there. And ours got shut down for our city, unfortunately. But it was a dream job of mine. And I knew the danger, and I was just like, man, that just drove me to it. And it's great that I love listening to stories from guys on the buy team, because, they're something I always wanted to do. It's so interesting and so much fun. And it's crazy that they didn't give you any undercover training. They're just like, hey, go for it.
Yeah, it was a crazy time, and in policing, I mean, luckily, like I said, this guy, because I didn't say anything, and if they would have said, "Hey, go," I would have
Right.
gone, because you're young and you don't want to, let them think that they made a mistake by choosing you, which is kind of stupid, right? Because you should just say what you're thinking. They're like, hold on a minute, forgive me,
Yeah.
but I have no idea what I'm doing here. But luckily, this guy was there, and he was like, "That we're not going to do that. He's going to ride with me, and I'm going to teach him, and then we'll cut him loose." But
Yeah.
it was an exciting time, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot
I
of,
learned.
yeah, I bet you did a lot. And it sounds like it from what you're speaking. I'm like, dude, you could be teaching a freaking course on that, like an undercover course, because a lot of the information you gave was really, really useful. Was your drugs that you guys are primarily going after, was it cocaine? Because I assume like around that time was cocaine cowboys were big in Miami and stuff like that. And the cartels had a big, hold in Miami and stuff like that. So was there a lot of like meth, or not meth, but cocaine interdiction and things like that, trying to bust up the cartels?
For us, it was really crack was the biggest thing. So
Crack. Okay. Wow.
crack was exploding. Crack was new, and it became super popular, very addictive, as you know, and it was
Mhm.
just exploding. So everyone was selling crack. There was some heroin because it was making a bit of a comeback. So heroin had died, and now it was making a little bit of a comeback. So heroin, but primarily crack. And then, of course, there was always a hole or two where they primarily sold weed, which, by the way, you
Okay.
needed to know. You just can't walk up and randomly ask for something. If every
Mhm.
place had its own system, you'd go sit in the chair, and that told them inside that you're there to buy. If the
Oh
light was
wow.
on, that means they're open. Those little things, you needed to know
Yeah.
that, because if you didn't follow whatever protocol that one hole had, they weren't going to serve you. You went up there and asked for
Mhm.
weed, and what they sold was crack. They knew you were law enforcement, right? So
So a lot
you
of
needed a little
research
bit of
went into it.
intel before you'd go.
Yeah. So how long would you guys sit and surveil one of these spots to get all the info, or was it already common knowledge for the street coppers that were already working it?
So a lot of the guys that, what we call the takedown guys, right? So those tactical guys that did takedown for us, they knew most of the time, okay, what they serve here is this. If there was a someone, that had a street name or something that they knew sold out of there, they would tell you, this is the person. If there was a system, right, like the light or the chair or whatever, you got to go ask at the window, don't knock on the door, that kind of shit. Anything
Mm.
like that, they typically knew. If it was a new hole and they didn't know, then you'd go and you can, in a few hours, you would already see what the protocol was, right? This is how this place
Yeah.
functions. You'd advise we do what was called a surveillance-based takedown. Watch the hole. Let the tactical guys know. Okay, this guy just walked up. He just gave him money. He just got dope. He put it in his right front pocket. Whatever the case was, he got into this car. He's driving in this direction. They'd stop him a couple blocks away, and then they would confirm, yeah, they're serving, crack, coke, whatever it is. And so we'd get the intel, and
Oh,
then we'd go try to make a buy there so we can get a warrant. If they were serving from inside, then you can get a warrant. If they were just right outside, then after we'd make a buy and leave, a little bit later they would pull in and make the arrest.
nice. And I assume everything in plain view, or the warrant would just be everything right there, and then anything in plain view from the windows that you could see, it could give you access to the house. If it was in plain view, then you would get access to the house.
Correct. Yeah. If
Right.
they served you from the house, immediately when you walk back to the car, you'd say, hey, it's a warrant buy. Everybody stay back. Because the fact
Yeah.
that they served you from inside the house was enough to get a warrant. Obviously, if
Yeah.
you saw something that changed the dynamic a little bit, um, and if you had the ability to make it a warrant buy, that was always better, because now you're going to come back on a different day with the SWAT
Yeah.
team. It gets a lot more attention in the block, right? Everyone's seeing, oh man, the police is doing something about this. It gives you an opportunity to potentially seize more drugs, seize
Yeah.
money, which always hurts them more, right? When you take
Mhm.
their money. So a warrant buy was always better, but we take whatever we can get.
Yeah, money and assets. I
Yeah,
see you, Florida boys. You guys are always taking the drug dealers' freaking cars and then transferring
that's
them
right.
over into police
Yeah,
vehicles.
that's right.
I love that. That's the best way to just be like, we got your number and we're coming after you and we're gonna steal your shit. And then
We're
when we
gonna
take
take
it
all
from
your
you,
shit, man.
yeah, it's amazing. And then they arrest you in it. Like it's crazy.
That's
I
right.
love it. Florida has some of the craziest people, some of the craziest laws, and some of the best police. I mean, you guys do some crazy,
Thank you.
wild cowboy stuff. I mean, I'm telling you. So that was shaping your career. You're having a lot of fun. How did you transfer into like, damn, I'm gonna be a chief of police? Like, when did that click? What
Man,
happened to get you
so it
there?
got to a point. I had a great time, working in these different units, but it did get to a point where I was coming home and complaining all the time, right? So I'd come home
Mhm.
and tell my wife, this sergeant, he's a pinhead, or she doesn't know what she's doing, or this guy, whatever, right? So I would complain all the time. And then,
Mhm. Yeah.
she told me one day, if you think you're so smart, or if you think you can do it better, then, well, why don't you just take the sergeant's exam and then you be the sergeant if you think
Okay.
you'd be better. And
Yeah.
I kind of took it as a challenge. I was like, okay. So I took the sergeant's exam and I ended up getting promoted. I was intimidated, Chuck, if I'm honest, because I hadn't been in
Oh, I bet.
patrol in a long time. So the reports that I wrote when I was a policeman, right, a cop on the street, were now completely different as a sergeant. I became a sergeant 13 years after becoming a cop. So a lot had changed, and
Okay.
I had not been on the street as a patrolman in a long time. So I was a little intimidated by that, but man, it went well. And I was a sergeant for a couple of years, and the lieutenant's exam came. I had just become eligible. So in Miami, you have to be in rank for at least 2 years before you can take the next exam.
Right.
So,
Similar for
man,
us.
that same month that I got off probation as a sergeant, not probation, that I was eligible, that same month that I became eligible, there was a lieutenant's
Right.
exam. I
Oh,
took the
nice.
exam, I got promoted to lieutenant, and I was a lieutenant for, I don't know, 2.5 years or something. And then I was offered a staff position as a commander. That was a lot of fun. I was put in Coconut Grove, which is a beautiful part of the city. Very, honestly, very entitled folk. They pay a lot in taxes and are very demanding and expect a lot. But I'll tell you what, it was a tremendous experience for me because they kind of took me in right away. I had a great time there. I felt like I was the chief of that area, right? And they treated me like I was the chief of that area. Man, and then it went really, really well. We did good. My philosophy with the policemen, especially in Coconut Grove, was, man, I want you guys to be out and about. If you see me coming and you're having a cup of coffee and you're mingling with the community, I'm cool with that.
Right.
If we're not backed up on calls, man, that's exactly what I want. So big community policing effort there because that's what the area needed and called for. Then I got promoted to major. I was lucky. I got to work in our tactical operations section. I got to work in internal affairs. I got to oversee a couple different districts. That went really well. I was a major for several years. And then I got promoted to assistant chief. I got to work as an assistant chief over every division. In fact, I was the first chief of police, luckily, that got to serve as an assistant chief over every division. So I was in administration, I was in investigation. I guess people just either retired or got promoted to chief and didn't have an opportunity to oversee the division as an assistant chief. But man, I got lucky. I was just assistant chief over administration. So I got to learn budget, training, property management, personnel management. Then I got to be an assistant chief over investigations. I got to be an assistant chief over field operations. So everybody who wore a uniform and all the high liability units, I got to do all of it. And then I got the opportunity to become chief of police.
Do you think that being able to touch absolutely every part of your department helped make you a really well-rounded chief of police?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you why, Chuck. I will admit that I always thought that the people that worked in some of these elements, that was like, a pie job. Those people there, they don't do shit, right? We're the ones that hump over here. Right? But everywhere that I went, I realized, wow, this is a lot of work. Like it didn't matter where it was. Everybody worked hard. Everybody had a lot of work. It was all important work. So it didn't matter where I went. I mean, I got to see now because I'm living it. Shit, this is a really important aspect of our organization. And so, man, I got to appreciate every element because I got to live it. I got to see, man, these are good people. These are excellent public servants. They do really good work. They do important work. It gave me an appreciation that honestly, I don't think I would have had I not gone through that.
I really like that too, because because I have the same view. People in that job, they have it easy, man. It's simple. Like you couldn't hack it on the street. So you're going to go and hide inside because you want to promote. Like we're very cynical as patrol cops, very
100%,
cynical.
100%.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie, still very cynical.
Yeah,
it is what it is, because I haven't had a chance to serve one of those positions. It's nice hearing someone be like, yeah, no, it has its pros and its cons, and it is tough. It's just tough in a different way. You know what I mean?
It's tough in a different way. You're buried, like, backgrounds. Man, it sounds like, man, that's bullshit, the work. But you're buried in paperwork. It seems like you never catch up. And I mean, if you're like me, I don't like to have shit pending. Right. I like to kind of clear my inbox. Well, that never happens there. You're constantly under pressure to pump shit out and pump it out. And it just doesn't end. Right. So it's that constant pressure of go, go, go. I mean, if you miss a day, you're so backed up, in patrol. It's the backbone of the organization. But, if you miss a day, the agency functions. Man, in some of these other units, you miss a day, your workload increased. That's not the case in other units. Yeah.
It's because like in patrol, like to be quite honest, like you're a number. Like if you miss today, you're out sick. okay, yeah, your partner might get screwed and have to work by himself because we work partner cars. So he might have to get screwed or work with someone else or have to work the desk.
Right.
And they're not going to like that very much. But
Correct.
at the same time, it's not going to really change too much. Now, if everybody, like you, 4 people call out, that's a bit tough. But one person, it's not going to make a difference really for the day. But like you're saying, a lead detective on, let's say, a robbery homicide case, if they're not there and that could make or break a case, or that could
No doubt about
lead to not having enough resources to go out that day to pick someone up, or something like that. So it's refreshing to hear that. So you made chief of police, and I assume you've seen some crazy stuff as a chief of police. How long were you chief of police for Miami?
Just over 3 years. So I did a little bit over 30 years at Miami as chief of police, just a little over 3 years.
Okay. What is one of the craziest or dumbest things you've ever seen come across your desk with involving an officer as a chief?
Man, so man, I hate to say that like this, but it's been a lot, a lot of things where I thought, this is terrible, and it's it was like one of the stupidest things I've ever seen a policeman do. I'm glad we caught him and we ended up firing this
Right.
guy. But this officer went to an accident call, right? So very basic accident, gets the person's driver's license for, both drivers, right? Very normal, typical shit. Then I don't know what possessed him, but, told the one driver that he needed their ATM card. And then he asked them what the PIN was. And then he walked across the street where there was an ATM and he pulled money out. And as you know, there's a camera there at the ATM. So luckily this person made the complaint of, hey, this is weird, but the officer asked me for this information. I gave it to him. And now I'm, down whatever amount of money it was. And then of course we went and we looked and we saw that, of course, he went and, and by the way, he's doing this. Like if he's
all
not
white cameras right there in his face.
like, that was probably the craziest. I just can't imagine what was going through that person's head. I'm really glad that this person made this complaint and we were able to purge him from the department, because honestly, I don't know what else this guy would have done had he not been caught. He'd only been on the job a couple years, but that was maybe the craziest.
Wow.
Yeah, that was nuts. It was almost unbelievable. It was like, are we being punked here? This is a joke, right? This certainly cannot be real that this happened. It just can't.
It almost
But it
sounds
did.
like an IA sting on you.
Right.
Like how
That's
crazy and outlandish it is. You're like,
100%. It was very bizarre. But it happened.
yeah, because we used to get those IA stings all the time where they'd be like, hey, this sounds really fishy. Someone just said there's a credit card left on top of a dumpster in an alleyway. This is the location. You guys need to go pick it up. And me and my partner look at each other, and the guy goes, it's probably fucking IA. It sounded like IA. Just
Yeah. Some kind of integrity check.
yeah. And it was during during the starting of a riot. And we were getting ready to go. The president was coming into town, and we were getting ready to go down there. And we're like, all right, we'll swing by. We swing by. Some transient came by and swooped that thing up because it was GOA, gone upon arrival. That thing was gone. And we're like, all right, we got toned out. We left the city and we went to where the president was. And then we ended up arresting a bunch of people. And we called back. We're like, hey, that thing's gone. Tell IA. I don't know what to happen. Like what happens. And then you get a letter in the mail and they're like, but it's so crazy. Like those stories are just like, what the, like, that's not, people don't do that. That's not normal. Right. And so you see this and you're like, is this an integrity check? Like, what the fuck? That's crazy, because what kind of cop would do that?
Man, it seems so weird, but sure enough. And so when you say what is the stupidest thing that an officer has done, that has to be up there. I've seen a lot of other stupid shit, to be honest, but that was pretty amazing because it seemed unbelievable, but it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. That seems so unbelievable. And now, what was one of the funniest things that you've ever seen as a chief of police? Because I'm sure there's got to be. I mean, it could be in that too. You'd be like, that was the funniest thing because it was so stupid. But was there anything that ever came across your desk? You're like, oh my god, this is just ridiculous.
Man, funny wise, I don't know. Man, that job as chief, at least for me.
Yeah.
it is so heavy, right? I mean, I felt the burden. I felt like I was responsible for the safety of every employee. I felt like I was responsible for the well-being of the merchants, right? If crime goes up, maybe people don't come out and shop, right? And these
Right.
businesses go out of business. Of course, Miami's dependent on tourism. I don't want bad shit to happen and tourists don't come. So
Right.
I felt that, right? I felt like we need to perform at a high level. So I can't really say that I dealt with stuff. I mean, I'm sure that there were things that happened. Oh, I know. Actually, I take it back.
There we go.
I take it back. Now, this wasn't something that happened. This was something that I did, but it turned out to be a lot of fun. We did an interview. The mayor and I did an interview, and the reporter, all kinds of shit was happening in Miami. The reporter's asking the mayor, "Hey, all this is going on. How are you guys handling it? How are you doing, sir?" Blah 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 to the mayor first, right? And so the
Mhm.
mayor, very serious. He says, "Well, I've cut out caffeine, right? So I'm trying my best not to have caffeine, and I'm eating primarily, vegetarian diet to try to stay fit. I try to exercise to help mitigate the stress, and blah 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 yada yada." And then she turns and asks me, "How about you, Chief? How are you making out?" And I said, "Oh, I'm drinking straight out of the bottle." So, the look on his face, the mayor, and then the look on the reporter's face is, I said it with a straight face. "Oh, for me, man, I'm drinking right out of the bottle. That's how I'm handling all of this. I call my wife on the way home, and she'll either have a cocktail waiting for me prepared. And if
Yes.
she's not home, then I'll just grab whatever and whoop." And so that's how it's going for me. He was like, he's playing, right? He's just joking. So that was a lot of fun seeing the reaction of both of them.
I love that humor. That's amazing humor because I
Well,
have
man,
similar
listen, you
humor.
gotta have it. You
You
listen.
have
You're
to.
gonna do a job like this, police work, man. You
Yeah.
you better see the funny side of stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Chuck, man, this is a tough gig, and we got a lot of cops that suffer trauma,
Yeah.
and it's okay to not be okay and to ask for help. And if you don't have the
Yes.
ability, to make light of things and joke around and laugh out loud, and if you don't have support at home, like I've had, fortunately,
Mhm.
man, it's okay. It's okay to say, "Hey, I'm in a little bit of pain. I need some help," because we just have too
Yeah.
many officers that make terrible decisions and harm themselves, and we just can't let that happen. We got to do better to support our men and women in blue. We just have to. We got to
Yeah.
do better.
Amen to that because I can't tell you how many brothers have lost to their own hand, and
Yeah,
it's so
man. Yeah.
sad. And it's okay. Hey, if you know someone who's struggling, reach out and be like, "Hey, are you okay?" It's okay to call them. Send them a text. "Hey, man, I'm thinking about you. You good?" That might be
Absolutely.
the text that changes it all.
And listen, it's tough. This is a tough gig, and sometimes the general public will look at you with these eyes of resentment. And you as a cop, you feel that in your heart because you sacrifice so much, and it's harmful. You don't focus on the incredible amount of people that love and appreciate you, because that's how we are as people, right? You can go to a place, you can go to um, a gala, and 10 people can say that you look great. And then
Mm.
someone says, "Hey, man, I'm not sure that fits right." And you'll go to the bathroom and check. You just
Yeah.
focus on the one negative. And so the cops forget, man, the amount of people that love them and appreciate them for what they do. So to your point, it's okay to check on a peer, a colleague, and say, "Hey, man, you're doing okay. Man, I appreciate you. You're my brother, my sister in blue. And let me know. Let me know if you need something. We got you." That matters. That matters.
Absolutely. 100%. And that could make a difference in someone's life because they when they get to that point, they think that no one's there, no one has their back. And just by that small text or small phone call lets them know people are caring about you.
No
People
doubt
people
about it.
give a shit because us as cops, we do tend to shut ourselves off from the public when we are home. We tend to shut ourselves off from our partners and stuff like that because we deal with a lot of shit. And that's why we're humorous. And coming back to that earlier point, we joke about things people constantly ask me, why do you joke around so much? Like, things are serious situations and you joke around, you'll crack a joke. And it's like, and they don't understand, like, that's unprofessional. I'm like, you have no idea the shit that I've seen. This helps me cope with it and it
Yeah, it's
allows
a
me to think
defense
clearly.
mechanism.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
without a doubt, man. It's a defense
Yeah.
mechanism.
100%. It allows you to deal with what you're currently dealing with, to push out that stress, out that fear, and out that worry out of your brain so that you can focus on the task at hand. Because it is a stressful and time sensitive thing, or maybe delicate, you need to deal with it then and there, but you're going to joke about things later. And, I do it in my personal life. I joke around. I'm super not serious in my personal life, but when that switch gets flipped, when it's work mode, different person.
It's time.
Yeah.
Listen, and the public, because the cops forget, during the George Floyd protests, the amount of emails, Chuck, I was the chief, the amount of emails I got of people saying, thank you so much. And your cops are doing an incredible job. And we appreciate you so much. Man, I would take those emails, do like a collage of them. Yeah. And then I would send them to the cops, right? So I would do these. Oh, listen, I would do video messages, right? Instead of sending an email, I would videotape myself sending the message of, hey, I appreciate what you're doing, or this is what's happening, or this is what's going on, or here's an update, whatever, right? So they're hearing me and the tone, the context, besides me just telling them, hey, the public appreciates you. No. I'm going to show you what they're saying about how much they appreciate you guys out there doing what you're doing. It makes a difference that they see.
Hell yeah, it does.
Don't get discouraged by the bullshit that people are telling you. Don't get discouraged about the shit you're hearing. The vast majority of the public appreciates you and they support you and they love the fact that you're out there keeping them safe. That's the truth. That's the vast majority.
Absolutely. And if there are any chiefs of police who are listening to this, this is what you should be emulating. And if there's anybody who thinks about becoming the chief of police, this is what you should be doing. Morale is number one. You should always think about morale, because if you don't have your backbone of the department to keep pushing forward, you don't have anything. You're not as strong without your department behind you as you are just yourself. If you're just yourself, you're one person. But if you can basically weaponize a whole team of people behind you, you've got a whole family coming to your aid and who wants to work with you and work for you. And having a good morale in a department will make people work as hard as they can for you, because they know that they're being valued. And that is a big, important thing. But it leads me to my last two questions. What do you think we can improve in policing today?
Man, I think the biggest thing for me is kind of what we've already talked about, which is take care of each other, back each other up and take care of each other. We're the only ones that know what it's like to be in this job. You can give people examples and you can try to explain what it feels like, right? When you were afraid, when you went to a dangerous call, when you were fighting for your life, when you miss your kid's birthday, when you had to work Christmas. You're the only one that knows what that feels like. Well, shit, man. Yeah, if you know what that's like, man, leave the petty bullshit aside, right? Don't your workspace, you should feel good there. Not you go to the station and you got other people that are standoffish or cliquish. Man, you got to be an absolute brotherhood all the time. All the time. Yeah. I don't care if you don't like somebody personally. They should know that if they need you, you're coming. You got their back. 100%. Sometimes in policing, man, we get petty. We really do. And we get territorial and we get cliquish. Man, back each other up, support each other all the time. All the time.
Yeah, we're all a big family. We all bleed blue. It is what it is. I mean, you're gonna squabble with your brothers and your sisters and your cousins and your family. It is what it is. Right. But at the end of the day, you're family, and you got to remember that. Now, speaking to the executives in law enforcement, so your captains and above, what do you think that they can improve upon in today's climate for policing?
Ask for help.
Ask for help.
Okay. Yeah. When every time I promote Chuck somebody, I would tell them, listen, I don't expect you to know anything about this position, right? You're brand new. I just promoted you. When you go to that, your new area of responsibility, please don't walk in there like you're an expert or you know what you're doing or you've been there for 20 years. go in there and ask them. Ask your people that now report to you, how can I help you? Explain this to me.
Amazing.
Hey, am I missing something? This is how I see it. Am I missing something? Help me out.
Right.
Don't be afraid to ask the people around you for help. Don't be afraid to show that you may not know. Just because you got the rank doesn't mean that now you have all this knowledge. It's okay to be a little vulnerable and say, hey guys, come here, let me ask you something. Is there a reason why we always go out that door and not this one that's a little closer to the cars? Man, just show that you want to learn and you want to support them. Don't go in there like you think you know everything, because you never stop learning, as you know, in this job. So my number one advice to people and staff, remember, you don't have all the answers, and it's okay to admit that. It's okay to say, hey guys, I don't have all the answers. We're going to work as a team here. We're going to work as a team.
Right. That's beautiful advice, because that doesn't just translate to law enforcement. That translates to any executive position or any high level position, management position, leadership position, because I say management position because that's what it's mainly listed as in like the regular jobs, but it's a leadership position. Don't ever think that if you're a manager, you are managing people, because you are not. You're leading them. You do not manage people at any point. You lead them. Manage papers and things. You lead people. So in any leadership position, that's great advice. And I love that. So I have one more question before we get into your Jorge Colina group. If you had any advice to give yourself coming up through the ranks, what would that be? Or to a younger rookie cop?
Man, I think honestly, if you work hard, right? If unfortunately, Chuck, in policing, maybe everywhere, but I know policing, man, you get tagged right away. You get labeled. We're very judgmental in this person. We really are. And we will label you right away. So if you're going to get labeled as, this is someone we can count on. This is someone who's going to back you up. This is a good worker. This is a hard worker. This is a person with a good heart. That's the way you want to get labeled, because man, if you get tagged a different kind of way, it takes so long to shed that. And so that's the advice I'd give a young officer. If you're a new chief, man, the advice that I would give you, or a new command officer, is just because someone is a high performer, because Chuck, one of the big mistakes that I made, admittedly, and I wish I can go back in time, but we can't, but I'll recognize the mistake. Man, I kept some people around that were high performers, but had very little emotional intelligence. Listen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Do it. Forget that they're a high performer. What you need to look at is, look in front of you, right? Look at directly in front of you of what you need to do right now, but you also need to look at the horizon and beyond. And if someone is a cancer, even if they're extremely intelligent and a high performer, man, they're a cancer, right? So you don't accept that. You're better off with someone that produces a little bit less, but isn't harming your organization. So that would be the advice. You got to measure the person as a whole, not just look at the one thing that they bring to the table. No, look at the whole and then make the right decision.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better myself. That is great advice. And I love hearing it from someone else, because it vindicates everything that I think as correct. So that's great advice. Sir, as we're getting ready to close out, because we're kind of reaching our time, you started the Jorge Colina group. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Man, I'll be really brief. Yeah. So I got a lot of phone calls when I retired, and it was very flattering. And so now I do leadership discussions, right? Somebody wants me to come speak to their police department, come speak to their executive staff, come speak to their company, because we've done that too. I have a partner,
right,
and speak about general, leadership, right? We do that. That's a lot of fun. If you can pay, great. If you can't, I don't care. I go do it anyway, right? So my partner doesn't like me to say that, but but I do it anyway, because it kind of appeals to the service side of my heart. So we do executive searches. We help other agencies find chiefs. We've done like 6 or 7 of those. That's fun. We do assessments where we go to an agency and we'll look at either an element or the whole agency. We're doing West Palm Beach right now, the city of. We've done quite a bit of those. And then we help, vendors that are in the public safety field, right? Whether it's with strategy, whether it's connecting them with decision makers, helping them navigate government contracts. So, man, I get to do a lot of different things. It's fun. I like it. I pick the amount of work I want, which is fun. And a lot of it I get to do from home too, which is also quite
That's
the
awesome.
advantage. Yeah.
How did that come to be? Like, how did that come into fruition?
Man, it was completely unplanned. So I retired as chief, and really soon after, I got a phone call from a city manager offering me a chief's job. I said, "Man, I appreciate it, but I'm done, right? I'm done. Somebody else now. It's somebody else's time." And then he asked, "Hey, well, can you help me find a chief?" And I thought, "Yeah, I can do that."
Amazing.
So I helped that person find a chief of police, and then I did another one and another one. Then I had vendors calling saying, "Hey, can you help us with strategy on how do we get into some of these police agencies?" And then I was asked to speak at some places. So I didn't really choose any of it. It just kind of came, and then I thought, "Shit, this is cool." And
That's
honestly,
really cool.
liked it. I've liked it.
So kind of just like the business kind of appeared out of nowhere because of necessity of needing a chief, and they wanted you, and you're like, "No, I'm done." They're like, "Well, help us," and you're like,
Right.
"Okay," and then you're like, "Oh, why don't I just monetize it and we create a business out of it? Why not? I'm already going to do it. Why not? Why not help
Why
them?"
not?
And then little Easter egg, retirement egg, I guess, if you
Yeah,
would say.
100%.
That's awesome. Hell yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's great. And you still get to stay in contact with law enforcement and keep going. Cause I know that's a big thing when guys retire. They want that camaraderie. They want that sense of purpose. They want that brotherhood, because once you retire, even though all the BS that you've gone through, you're just like, you're so happy to retire. 6 months to a year later, you're like, man, I miss my guys. I miss the people. I miss the camaraderie. I miss I don't know. There's something about it that you just miss. So that's great that you get to keep around, because that probably keeps that at bay and you get to live your life.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And that's exactly the way it's worked out. I get to interact with a lot of former colleagues. I get to see a lot of people. It really has, thank God, it has been great.
That's awesome. So as we get to close out this episode, we always give our guests the chance to dedicate an episode to a fallen brother or sister. I know that was kind of sprung on you last minute, but as we were talking, I know you were talking about someone, and that person was who again?
So Victor Estefan is an officer that we lost many, many, many years ago. We've lost officers since, and we lost officers before. And they're all important, right? And not just in Miami, across the country, somebody who's made the ultimate sacrifice. But this guy was truly a beautiful person. He was shot and killed by a piece of shit who had fled California and come down to Miami, and Victor didn't know, and he tried to stop him for some traffic offense, and he was shot and killed. And his family, we have a yearly memorial that we do at the station. Mm-hmm. His family always comes, even after all these years. And, he's someone that, from time to time, he just pops into my head. I can't explain why, but he just does.
Wow. Well, rest easy, brother. We've got it from here. Thank you so much for that. And where can people find you?
Man, so on LinkedIn,
yeah.
So on LinkedIn, there is the Jorge Colina group on LinkedIn. And then there's me, J. Colina, Colina on LinkedIn. And I'm primarily there. We have Instagram. We have a web page, the Jorge Colina group. But primarily what I really monitor the most is LinkedIn, because, it's more of a business community, and I connect with a lot of people through there. So they can find me there.
Wow. Okay. So go to LinkedIn, check them out there. And I'm sorry if you already said it, the Jorge Colina group. If I want to reach you, if I want to give this out to say a city manager or something like that, where would I send them? What's the website again?
So the website is the Jorge Colina group, right? So that's the web page. Okay. You can go there and you can see all the different services that we do. Or you can go to LinkedIn. We have the Jorge Colina group has a LinkedIn page. And then I have my own at J. Colina on LinkedIn. Any one of those, you can contact us through there. Awesome. And we'll reach back out to you.
Awesome, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And if you guys are you're having troubles finding a chief of police or need help in that search, this is the man to go and find. 100%. Him and his partner will get you set. thank you all today for tuning in. We appreciate the support. Please check us out on our Facebook and our Instagram. Check the links in our bios. Make sure to go to our YouTube and click the notification bell. Subscribe to us. We're going to drop episodes there. Our Locker Room Lives will be broadcasted there. So if you want to catch us there live, make sure to tune into our YouTube channel. And if you want to support us, go to www.warstoriesofficial.com. You can grab some gear. If you want to be featured on the show, you can go to booking.warstories@gmail.com. And we can get you connected. If you have a friend who you think would be a great fit for us, tell them about it. Send them to booking.warstories@gmail.com, and we can get them booked. This is our website, www.warstoriesofficial.com. You can also check us out on TikTok before they take it down, www.tiktok.com/WarStoriesLockerRoom. You can also check us out on LinkedIn right here on the screen. And it's going to be LinkedIn War Stories Podcasts. Thank you for the support. Stay safe. And as always, come home with your shield or on it.